This is the story of a high school basketball team who did something, as far as we know, had never been accomplished before or since, winning 2 tournaments in 2 different towns in the same night. The Oil Springs Wildcat team of 1958-1959 did exactly that. Here is how it all came about. We will quote Coach Rusty Yates of Oil Springs, who had played collegiately for Coach Ellis Johnson at Moorhead in the late 1940s and had learned quite a bit from him, from a newspaper account about a week later. It was his 3rd year of coaching the team. He sported a record of 35-4 the previous year. Yates said he had not planned to play in both tournaments at the same time, but since Oil Springs was in the Foothills Conference, they naturally accepted that tournament bid. Then Bill Goebel, manager of the Prestonsburg tournament, the first Prestonsburg Invitational, asked us to play there, and we assumed that the dates wouldn't conflict. Then we learned that they ran at the same time, Yates said. Foothills Conference tournament was Wednesday night. Wolfe County drew a bye, and Oil Springs beat Hazel Green Academy. Merville Blair had 26, Raleigh Blair had 16, and Richard Conley had 12. On Thursday night, Salyersville beat Morgan County, and Ezell beat Menifee County. In the Friday night semifinals, Oil Springs beat Wolfe County, and Salyersville beat Ezell. This set up the championship game between Oil Springs and host Salyersville for Saturday night. Now we'll get back to that game momentarily. For the Prestonsburg Invitational Tournament, a 2-night invitational, on Friday night, Oil Springs beat host Prestonsburg 61-48. Meade Memorial defeated Martin 66-64. At halftime of the game against Wolfe County on Friday night in Salyersville, Coach Rusty Yates took 7 of his team in an automobile to Prestonsburg to play in that game and arrived as the teams were warming up, so there wasn't much ado about that on Friday night. The rest of the boys who remained in Salyersville to finish the Foothills tournament game arrived in Prestonsburg in time to see their teammates win there. Saturday night had to have been planned very carefully by Coach Yates if he were to pull off 2 wins on the same night in 2 different tournaments in 2 different towns. Remember now, there was no Mountain Parkway. The roads were crooked. Plus, in Prestonsburg, they were to face Meade Memorial, who had beaten them 3 times earlier in the season. Once on this court in Prestonsburg, once in the Ashland Invitational, and again in the Paintsville Invitational. Now the scene had been set. The 2 games played about the same time, 22 miles separating them, and a car loaned to the coach by a friend, Ralph Castle, who would aid Oil Springs School principal Herschel Conley while coaching at Prestonsburg. Coach Yates decided to take Richard Conley and another starter to Salyersville to play with the reserves. Conley was an all-state player and a really good all-around athlete. Oil Springs defeated Salyersville that night to win the Foothills Conference tournament by a score of 68-40. In that game, Burgess Blanton had 23 points and Richard Conley had 22 for Oil Springs. Now it was off to the races for Coach Yates and 2 players, Conley and Blair. Probably Raleigh Blair. Meanwhile, in Prestonsburg, Oil Springs led at the end of the first quarter 13-11, but Meade dominated the second period and was leading at the half 30-24. We can only wonder what speech Principal Conley and friend Ralph Castle, who were coaching the Wildcats in that tournament, gave the guys. But it must have sunk in as the Wildcats center, big 6'8" Merville Blair, took over control of the boards and also hit 10 consecutive free throws in the third quarter for an Oil Springs lead of 44-41. The Wildcats pretty much dominated the fourth quarter and at one time led by 15 points. Meanwhile, Coach Yates, with 2 starters, was racing, trying to get to Prestonsburg in time to help in any way possible. But just out of town, it happened. Just what they didn't need. No, not a speeding ticket. A flat tire of all things. We can only imagine the coach and players scurrying to solve the problem. The players were most likely in their uniforms and warm-ups since it was the end of January. When they pulled into the parking lot at Prestonsburg, Yates led his players out, and they sprinted to the gym. As stated previously, they most likely were still in their uniforms worn in the Salyersville game. Coach Yates hurriedly found a place to park Castle's car. By the time Coach Yates got in the gym, there were 2 minutes remaining, and one of his players had fouled out. So Conley was inserted. Oil Springs, after being beaten by Meade Memorial 3 times earlier in the season, was not to be denied. Conley showed no signs of an ankle injury that hindered him in their last encounter. Playing in one town, sprinting to a car, changing a flat tire, sprinting into the gym 22 miles away, he was ready to go. Final score, Oil Springs 68, Meade 60. As a side note, senior Donnie Butcher was the high scorer for Meade Memorial that night in Prestonsburg against Oil Springs. He had played for the Wildcats as a sophomore and a junior. That is what basketball and other sports in our area is all about. This is why bleachers are crowded on Friday nights. This is why people like us at the Mountain Sports Hall of Fame want to honor all our athletes.